talk a little bit about the battle over the talking points of the U.S. consulate attack in Benghazi. Who knew what, when, what was the truth, what was the whole truth, and who told the whole truth, if ever? 97 House Republicans standing up against Susan Rice as a possible candidate for Secretary of State. They say she did not tell the truth about Benghazi. Congressman Michael Burgess is a Republican from the great state of Texas, according to Will Kane. It's nice to have you with us, sir. Thank you for talking with us. Appreciate it. Did you sign this letter?
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Are you one of the 97 who signed this letter?
Yes, I am. I got to tell you that Sunday when the 4 or 5 interviews occurred, you just knew something wasn't right as you were watching that. First off, why is our ambassador to the United Nations the one on talking about this in the first place? Did we not have anyone available from the State Department or from the administration itself? So it was a little unsettling to have the ambassador herself out there on the shows. And, you know, I frankly don't understand why you in the media have not been more critical of the fact that your outlets were used in a way to put forward information that, you know, everybody now believes was not correct, and we believe it was known that it was not correct at the time it was put out there. So that's what's so troubling about this.
Yeah, you know, and I think what we have been trying to do, and by we, I think I speak media in general, is like figure out, so what has happened? What was the timeline? And who did know what, when, and who gave what talking points to whom? And what we seem to know now, in fact, it looks as if that the intelligence was wrong, and that the folks in the intelligence community have said that they gave the talking points to Susan Rice, and they changed those talking points so that she wouldn't talk about al-Qaeda. She was talking about extremists. So to me, some of the takeaway seems to be the intelligence community should bear the bulk of the blame. You don't see it that way? Why not?
Well, it had to fit within the narrative of the president's campaign at the time that al-Qaeda was on the run. It was no longer a threat. So to have put someone out there saying al-Qaeda was, Ansar al-Sharia was responsible for this, who was sponsored by al-Qaeda, that would have been, they wouldn't have fit with the narrative that had been really the main talking point since the Democratic Convention. So in my mind, that I think was influenced it.
So let me just clarify that, but wasn't that the CIA changed, right? They're the ones who edited the talking points so that it wouldn't say al-Qaeda, and I think they used the word to protect their sources, it would say extremists. So they made that edit, which to me, again, seems to go back to the intelligence community. It's not that Susan Rice got a long list of talking points and said, ooh, I don't want to say al-Qaeda, let me cross that out, I'm going to use the words extremist. She was given talking points that had removed that word al-Qaeda and put in extremists. Isn't that correct?
Well, really, the big question is who in the administration said Susan Rice should be the person out there talking about this in the first place. And
so
look, the more we learn about this, there was the real-time information. No, the real-time information that our consulate was under attack. And I'll tell you what bothers me is that someone in the White House Situation Room or at the State Department or at the Pentagon said, it's not worth it. We can't go in and help them. And to understand how long the attack continued, that's really troublesome. The fact that the United States cannot respond within an hour's time to an attack like that on its own State Department, I mean, that's just incredible information to give to the rest of the world. And I think if I were a member of the diplomatic corps, I'd be troubled.
I'm sure they are. And I think that when they talked to General Petraeus, he talked a lot about sort of the intelligence. Again, it sort of all goes back to the intelligence for me. Let me ask you a question, though. I have asked others before how this does not compare, the Susan Rice issue, to the Condoleezza Rice issue on weapons of mass destruction. She was also wrong when she was the National Security Advisor, right? She had information, and she talked to Member Wolf Blitzer about, you know, let's not have this smoking gun become a mushroom cloud. And fast forward 3 years, in 2005, when she was up to be Secretary of State, it was Lindsey Graham who was furious that the Democrats were pushing back. It was Senator John McCain who was furious that the Democrats were pushing back on Condoleezza Rice to be Secretary of State. She was wrong on weapons of mass destruction. How is this different?
Well, the difference is the scrutiny provided by our free press in this country. Condoleezza Rice was exposed to withering criticism by the press. I don't see that happening now. Maybe I've missed something in the talking points, but I don't see that happening.
So the
ambassador of the United Nations should not have been the person on the Sunday shows. Someone from the administration of the State Department should have been.
So you're confusing me there for a moment. When you say the scrutiny on the press, are you saying 5 days after comments about weapons of mass destruction, you feel like the media was picking apart Condoleezza Rice? And I don't think that's true, sir. I think that most people would say that is not the case, that it took a long time. I'm talking about 3 years before she was up for Secretary of State. So if you're blaming the press, how does it go back to Susan Rice?
Different situations with different timelines.
Okay, so how does it go back to Susan Rice?
Well, they're different situations with different
How is she to blame, is my question.
Again, first thing is I do not understand who in the administration thought that this would be a good idea and why. What was their reasoning behind that? No one has answered that question. I've written letters to the president.
Question.
I've asked the State Department to discuss this with me.
How do you believe what Susan Rice did was say something that was incorrect? We know now, the intelligence community says, we gave her the talking points. The information, the intel was incorrect. How does that go back to blame Susan Rice? And my question, of course, is because you're one of the 97 people who've signed saying that you believe that her misleading statements causes irreparable damage to her credibility and she should not be Secretary of State. And I don't see the difference between the Condoleezza Rice situation.
It does damage credibility. Now, look, you know as well as I that House members do not get a vote on presidential appointments. But the purpose of this letter was to let our senators know this is something that we believe deserves their scrutiny. And I think you would want that.
Of course, hey, I'm all about scrutiny, but I guess I like consistency too. But you were not calling for more scrutiny, and you weren't saying that the fact that Condoleezza Rice was wrong on weapons of mass destruction was going to damage her credibility as Secretary of State. Again, the McCain and Lindsey Graham were supporting that. It seems just contradictory to me.
Well, you'll have to take that up with Senator McCain and Senator Graham. But the fact of the matter is, from where I sit right now, the credibility for Susan Rice to be our Secretary of State has been damaged by this. Now, it may have been damaged by the administration itself. It may have been an error for the administration to put her out there rather than someone from the State Department or rather than a campaign spokesperson. But what it appeared to the great masses out here is that Susan Rice was put out there to place a storyline into the print or into the national media that was in fact inconsistent with the facts, and that is something that's just been very, very difficult for her to get around.
I'm completely out of time, but I got to throw a quick question to you. We talked to Congressman Clyburn, and he says, listen, it's because she's black and because she's a woman that you guys are doing this, meaning the 97 Republicans who've signed this.
No, that's absolutely false, and I don't know where Senator or Representative Clyburn gets his information, but I will just tell you he's factually incorrect.
Michael Burgess is a Republican congressman and a doctor. I should say Dr. Burgess, joining us from Dallas, Texas. Nice to have you, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Got to take a break. We're back in a moment.